Click or tap once, enter a name, browse to choose a location if you want to, and then choose Create. The database opens with a single table, and at this point I'm going to switch to a larger database because we need to learn some new terms. Regardless of the type of database you create, all access databases consist of 5 components called objects. Tables store your data. They're the backbone of your database, and they organize data into fields or columns and records or rows, and I'm going to use the terms field and record in this course because they're industry standards. The database opened with a single table. What you're seeing here is called datasheet view, and view is a term you need to remember. Your database objects are always in a view of some kind, either views for creating an object or views for using that object. And as an example, this table is open in Datasheet View, but right-click its tab and I can open it in Design View. This is one of the tools Access gives you for creating and changing tables, and I'll show you how to use it later in this course. This form is open in Form View, but I can also open it in Layout View to add controls or change the form. Also, remember that some views do both jobs. For example, I can add data to this table, but I can also add fields and change the design. Once you have a design, tables are the first thing you build. I'm going to put our design up here for reference, and then I'll double-click the ID field here. You can see it becomes writable, and I'll rename the field as Customer ID. This is my primary key, and here's something to remember. All your tables must have a primary key. They're a part of good database design. You break your data into tables, and you give each table a primary key. I'm naming this one Customer ID because that way I know where the values in the field come from, the customer's table. And when I press Enter here, Access selects the next blank field, and it shows me a menu. This is a list of data types, and every field in your database has to have one. Data types make storage more efficient because they control the size of your fields. For example, if you only need to capture names, you don't have to create a huge storage space for those names. That may not seem important in our example, but it is when you have a lot of data. Data types also help you prevent mistakes. For example, you can't enter a name in a field set to contain dates and times. So let's take a quick look at the data types you can use. Short text, which holds up to 256 characters. Number, currency, date time, and yes/no. A yes/no field can contain yes, no, true, false, or 1 and 0. Lookup and relationship isn't a data type. It lets you create lists of choices, and I'll show you how to do that in the next video. Rich text and long text both let you store a gigabyte of text. Desktop databases use rich text, and Access apps use long text. The main difference between them is you can apply fonts and other formatting to rich text, such as bold and italic. The attachment data type lets you attach pictures and other files to a record, just like email. Hyperlink lets you store web and email addresses, and the calculated field data type lets you do things like combine first and last names or calculate a discount. Also, you're not seeing it in the menu because it's already used in this table, but notice the auto number data type. It assigns a sequential number whenever you add a new record. The thing to remember is you can't change or delete a value in one of these fields. Access won't let you, and that's why so many primary keys use this data type, because as a rule, you never want to change primary key values. Also, when you build a table in an Access app, you can use the image data type instead of the attachment data type to store and display images. So I'll select short text for this field because I'm only storing names, and notice that after I select the type, the header becomes writable. I'll enter first name and press Tab to select the next blank field. Short text again, enter last name, press Ctrl+S to save the table, and I'll call it Customers. So that's it for this table. That's all we need, a primary key and a field for first and last names. Let's revisit the design principles we've covered here. Every table has a primary key, every field has a data type, and did you notice how I broke the names into first and last? That's another rule. Each field holds the smallest possible unit of data. So keep going and we'll build the second table. So now we'll build the second table in our example, and for this one I'll use Table Design View. On the ribbon I select Create, then Table Design. If you like using hotkeys, you can press Alt, then the letter for the command you want to use. In this case, that's C, and then TD. The designer starts, and you see this new tab here. These are called contextual tabs. Access has several of them, and they only appear when you need them. You can see this one has commands for inserting or deleting fields, and one for setting a primary key. So here in the field name column, I'll enter phone ID, and from the data type list, I'll select auto number, and then I'll click primary key. You can also right-click the row and see a lot of the same commands, and again you can press Alt, then the letter next to the command you want to use. So in the next row, the next field, I'll enter phone number and choose the short text data type. Below that, I'll enter type, and here's where I'll use lookup. Click Lookup Wizard. I'll type the values I want and click Next. One column is fine, and in the first row I'll enter Office, then Mobile, Fax, Emergency, and Home. Click Next, and you can see the field already has the name I entered, so click Finish. Now in the first session, I mentioned that we could have broken this field into its own table, but we aren't because it's a small amount of data. So what I've done instead is create a value list. When I go to enter a name, I just pick the right value from the list. Finally, we need to create our foreign key. I'll call it Customer ID FK, and here's what that stands for. Customer ID is the name of the primary key, and the FK stands for foreign key. In other words, this is a shorthand way of knowing that this is a foreign key, and its primary key is the customer ID field in the customers table. Next, I'll set the data type to number, and this leads to another rule. The data types for your primary and foreign keys have to match or be compatible. In our case, I used a compatible data type, and I did that because the primary key is an auto number field. Remember, Access controls the values in auto number fields. It keeps them in sequence as you add customer names, and it never lets you duplicate any of those sequential values. The thing is, you'll need to duplicate values in the foreign key field anytime a customer has more than one phone number, so we can't use auto number here. We need a compatible data type, and in this case, it's number. But you can also use other data types with your key fields, such as text, and the course summary has links to show you how that works. For now, save the table, call it phone numbers,